students. Class 10 students, be attentive. Today in environmental science, we are learning the lesson food. In that unit, sustainable agriculture. Food is one of the main basic needs of man. Can we survive without food? Isn't it? No. So it is believed that purposeful crop growth began about 10,000 years ago. If you take this software, computer course, etc., these are all new professions. But agriculture is very old. How old is it? 10,000 years ago, man started doing farming or agriculture. Man turned from hunting and gathering to nurturing wild plants as source of food. He selected those plants which flourished in that particular climate and resisted the attack of pests and diseases. Through trial and error, he discovered best crop varieties which he cultivated. So how he started cultivation? Trial and error. He will eat one which is very tasty. Then he will start growing it. Then he selects that. That is selection, natural selection he does. Then like that he started trial and error and various methods also he started, and finally he has used that particular crop to grow, and pests and all also he started managing. So agriculture today is the backbone of our economy since it provides food security, generates employment, etc., helps to alleviate poverty, and also contributes significantly to the country's export. So today in this pandemic situation, we are able to close everything, textiles, gold shop. Without all that we are able to survive. But we are not able to close the food, isn't it? So all these food vendors, vegetables, markets are still open, whatever is sealed down or locked down. That shows the importance of food. Is it clear? India has achieved a remarkable success in food grain production. The food grain production in 2003 to 2004 was estimated to be about 212.05 million tons. You can imagine the volume of the food grains grown in India. India will, however, need to produce about 300 million tons of food grains by the end of the first decade of the 21st century to keep pace with the increasing population. So always population growth and the food grain growth production must be both in a pace. Is it clear? There is thus urgent need to increase the production in food to meet the demands of the burgeoning population without degrading and depleting the natural source. Got it? So it is very much important to grow. So that is how sustainable agriculture came into existence. What is meant by sustainable agriculture? Sustainable agriculture provides high yield without undermining the natural system and resources that productivity depends on. Got it? Without spoiling the natural resources, the growth undermining natural systems without spoiling them. Is it clear? The most common sustainable agriculture techniques employed by farmers today to achieve the key goal of weed, pest, disease, soil erosion control, and high quality of soil and yield are the following. Number one is crop rotation, cover crops, mechanization, biological pest control, application of biotechnology in crop protection, mixed farming, and use of manure and fertilizers. Got it? These are the main methods in sustainable agriculture. Then how do you define sustainable agriculture? Sustainable agriculture may define as successful management of agricultural resources in such a way so as to satisfy the changing human needs and at the same time maintaining and enhancing the quality of environment and conserving natural resources. So today we have land area. If you take, that is limited because that will never grow. Land area, the earth volume will not grow, no children. Land area is strictly limited. The per capita land availability in India sometimes decreases from 0.5 hectares in 1950 to 51 to 0.15 hectares in 1999-2000. You might ask, the land will not decrease, no ma'am. Now only you told it will not increase, it will not decrease, but now you are telling per capita decreased by the construction of the buildings, converting agricultural land into industries. That way the per capita hectares will be decreased, children. Now you understood. So when you go on developing roads, all that, the productive agricultural land will decrease. This is likely to go further down with each passing year. It is predicted that it will be only 0.08 hectare at the end of the second decade of 21st century. Increase in production is only possible by efficient management of natural resources like soil. What are natural resources? Soil, water, forest, and man-made resources like fertilizers, pesticides, agricultural and machines, etc. Got it? Using sustainable agricultural techniques like mixed farming, just now we have learned. No. What are those techniques? Crop rotation, mixed farming, mechanization, cover crops, genetic engineering, that is using biotechnology in controlling of pest, integrated pest management, etc. Got it? So the estimated agricultural production in India is like this, children. From 2004 to 2005, food grains, it is 210.44. Got it? And rice is 87.12 tons, 1 to 12 tons. Cereals 95.43 tons. Wheat 74.05 tons. Pulses 15.01 tons. Oil seeds 25.15 tons. Tea 0.8 tons. Sugarcane 234.67 tons. So this many million tons. All these are in millions, children. Got it? That much of production has taken place in India in 2004 to 5. In 1940, several agricultural research programs were carried out in Mexico to prevent starvation, death of millions of people. So children, immediately after 1939, what has happened in 1939? World War, isn't it? After that, production has become very less and people started dying, starvation. A team of agricultural scientists worked incessantly, that is constantly, with a person called Norman Borlaug to produce new varieties of wheat, rice and maize. It required several generations of plant breeding before the high yield wheat could be introduced into Mexican agriculture in the 1960s. Got it? In 1960s, a person by Norman Borlaug, he has introduced wheat, rice and maize, children, new varieties. What is the speciality of these new varieties? They are short-statured, stunted, children. Wheat varieties that use less energy to grow, tail stalks and use the free energy to produce higher yields. The varieties were also resistant to wheat rust, and there was production of higher yield in chemical inputs were given to the crop. Got it? This was the beginning of Green Revolution. They call this as Green Revolution. Here I like to say the Norman Borlaug, he started a special kind of wheat where the stalks are very less. Unwanted material of the plant is not growing, like long stalks, long stems, leaves long and all. Stunted growth. When the growth is reduced, normally the less energy is used and fast growth becomes faster. Got it, children? So he started, and this is the beginning of Green Revolution. Now we are going to learn some of the contributions of Norman Borlaug. So he has contributed to the Green Revolution. Hence he is called father of Green Revolution. Got it? So he is the first beginner, pioneer. The varieties of wheat were introduced in India also, leading to dramatic impact on wheat production. Traditional Indian wheat averaged 850 kg per hectare, while the semi-dwarf variety gave 25,000 kg per hectare. See the difference, children, how much the yield increased. A revolution was thus sparked in India wheat agriculture. Between 1961 to 1998, total production rose from 11 million metric tons to 66 million metric tons, enormously. Is it clear? So who is responsible for all this means Padma Vibhushan, Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, was one of the leaders of Green Revolution in India. His work in crop genetics and sustainable agriculture development won him numerous accolades worldwide. He has been recently named one of the most influential Asians of the 20th century. Swaminathan recognized the need of an evergreen revolution of ecologically friendly farming methods to sustain the benefits of development of marginalized people. Got it? So that is the beginning of the Green Revolution. Got it? When it was in 1940, and by the time 1940 was a situation, starvation, deaths, that led Norman Borlaug to think, and then later his research work, and in India it is followed by Padma Vibhushan Dr. M.S. Swaminathan. That is why Swaminathan is named as Green Revolution, father of Green Revolution in India. Is that clear? Now, fields of Green Revolution. What are the various fields of Green Revolution? Increased dependence on monoculture. Various fields of Green Revolution are many children, like increased dependence on monoculture, got it, and mechanization, irrigation, chemical fertilizers, chemical pesticides. One by one we are going to learn. Got it? So first we are going to learn the increased dependence on monoculture. So when we go for the monoculture, what is meant by monoculture? It is the practice of producing crop varieties that have uniform growth characteristics of individual plants, all grow at the same time and at the same rate, having same biological traits, and reach maturity at the same time over a wide area for a large number of consecutive years, continuously, all of same size, same way, same kind, like your class 9, class 10, all similar, no similar way, like that, all is called monoculture. One of the main aims of plant breeding is to develop crops, varieties that have uniform growth characteristics. The individual plants all grow at the same rate, have similar biological trait, and reach maturity at the same time. Crops growing uniformly are called monocultures. Farmers can apply similar management means across large fields at the time required for the field's operation decreases. So field operations, the work, the various other activities. One day one side crop cutting the harvest, another quarter field another crop, like that every day they need not do. So all together they can harvest, like that, all at once they can do. Monoculture means that one. Mechanization. Mechanized agriculture is practiced on large farms. Cultivators, planters, barrows, sprayers and harvesters, tillers, got it? And this one, what do we call, threshers, combines, these are all machines, children. Tractors, all these are used for sowing crop, fertilizing, cultivating, pesticides, seed drills, okay, application and harvesting. Crop uniformity has made mechanized farming possible. So if you do monoculture, once you tilling means tilling, once plowing means plowing with one tractor. So at once the work will becomes easy. Got it? Wheat combines can cut and thresh crops, separate grain from chaff, and collect hay separately at once. All one operation, one time work. It's not each time one practice. Now irrigation. Well irrigated fields can give up 3 harvests per year. See, 3 harvests, 3 crops it can give. It is estimated that 40% of world's food supply comes from irrigated fields. High yield is obtained by combining monoculture, mechanization and irrigation. All together combines means high yield will come. The more fertile the nutrient rich the soil, higher is the agriculture yield. So now we should start thinking of fertilizer. Now monoculture is over. Next, using of machines. Next is irrigation, that is supply of water. Now what is the next item we should think of? It is about fertilizers. So what kind of fertilizers? Chemical fertilizers are becoming more popular as compared to manures. Chemical fertilizers are easier to apply, cost less, and contain 3 main nutrients: phosphorus, potassium and nitrogen. So one or more than one nutrients will be available in chemical fertilizers. That's also one of the advantage. The varieties of wheat, rice and maize developed during Green Revolution gave much higher yield on application of fertilizers. Got it? Now next is what is the next process? First is monoculture. Next, mechanization. You have learnt irrigation. Now fertilizers. After fertilizers, next step is pesticides. So chemical pesticides. Farmers may lose large part of their crop if attacked with the insects, molds and virus and causing diseases. This is the major problem, children. Pests. Green Revolution varieties. Nowadays you have learnt now recently after the corona. What is that? The mites also have come and people suffered now in some of the states. Green Revolution varieties are susceptible to pest attack and diseases as they have less genetic diversity. Chemical pesticides have to be used to protect the crops. Next is what? After harvesting. Got it? So, did you understand? Next is harvesting. So, high yield was given by the Green Revolution. But there are certain drawbacks, effects. Now let us see what are the effects of Green Revolution. Effects of Green Revolution. Although Green Revolution made a tremendous impact on increasing crop production, yet several associated ecological problems emerged after year of usage of Green Revolution. Years of usage of same chemicals, same pesticides, the problem started. What is that problem? First, with the pesticides. Resistant to pesticides. Crops became resistant. Monocultures are highly susceptible to plant disease, pest attack and weed growth. Chemical pesticides have to be used to protect crops. With the passing time, weeds, insect and other pests have developed increasing resistance to chemical pesticides. Pesticides that became more resistant to chemicals survive and reproduce. Got it? So they also survive, they also start reproducing. That is how the less resistant pests will die and more resistant pests will survive. They also reproduce. In order to cope with this situation, farmers have to apply higher concentration of pesticides or buy newer, more expensive chemicals. Got it? Suppose you have headache. One day you take tablet. Second day, third day. Continuously if you take for 10 days, 11th day your tablet will not start working. Then what you need to do? You need to take 2 tablets. So the 2 tablets condition, again 3, 4. It goes to certain extent. How many hour tablets you take, it will not go. then you need to go for higher concentration. So same thing happens with the pesticides also for the crops. The same thing happened. That is one of the drawback. Resistance to pesticides and harming other organisms. Sometimes broad spectrum pesticides not only kill target organism but also destroy some beneficial insects. There are so many insects which are beneficial for pollination, dispersal of seeds. So many things you have learnt now. So all these also will be affected. These insects eat other insect pests or help in plant pollination. As a result, some species that were not previously a problem now create a problem, which was not a problem, but now they started creating problems. Honeybees are one of the most important pollinator insects. The whole world agricultural field is depending on honeybees children. The honeybees are destroyed, the agriculture only will stop. Such an important organism it is. That started becoming problem now. Repeated application of pesticides such as parathion, malathion, etc. has resulted in lowering of bee population. Got it? That is one of the major drawback. Next, what happened? Let us see. Bioaccumulation and biomagnification. So DDT is one of the most important pesticide. DDT was considered one of the most important and useful pesticide. But studies show that DDT, got it, dichloro, difluoro, trichlorine, got it, showed that DDT and other pesticides accumulated in organisms and moved through the food chains. You know about food chain, from herbivores to carnivores, carnivores to omnivores, omnivore to decomposers, finally they land up in the soil. Like that, the food chain continued. So one organism to other organism, the DDT started flowing in food chain. Pesticide accumulated in organism moved through the food chain. Successive bioaccumulation and biomagnifications cause toxic effects in the fish and wildlife. Previously, I have taught you what is meant by, in your previous lesson, you have learned what is meant by biomagnification in the case of algae in ponds, isn't it? So I need not explain again biomagnification. Okay, a living organism can take up pesticides in the environment and store in their tissues. Again, anyhow, I will be teaching you what it is called, biomagnetism. This is called bioaccumulation. That is, suppose I eat, every day I eat some material that gets stored in my body. When I die, no, by decomposition, whatever material I had taken constantly, which is accumulated in my tissues, will go into the soil, isn't it? Similar way, from herbivores to carnivores, carnivores to omnivores, the material will be transferred. Got it? As these organisms enter the food chain and web, the concentration of pesticides increase. Thus, higher an organism is in the food chain, the higher the level of the pesticide it consumes. This is known as biomagnification. A classic case of this phenomena was seen when DDT was used to control mosquitoes in New York. Fish-eating birds, fish, all those had high levels of DDT. Minamata in Japan, got it, in one particular pond, fish, whichever fish the surrounding people were eating, they all got a peculiar disease called Minamata. When tested, they found that bioamplification, bioaccumulation, the toxic chemical was there, zinc and copper was there in their body, and that is what they found out. Got it? That is called biomagnification. Now, pesticides residues. Pesticide residues in food. Traces of pesticides have been detected in many food items, milk, fruits, vegetables showed. Now grapes also, if you take grapes, if you won't wash and eat, there will be pesticide residues on them. And onion, tomatoes, capsicum and all you will find. Vegetables showed pesticide residues on testing. Parathion, dieldrin traces were seen in the cereals and pulses also. Got it? So some of the pulses also. So then came how to manage this pest. Pest control was important. Integrated pest management. IPM it is called. Integrated pest management. Effective fruit crop production depends on the grower developing a system of crop management that is appropriate for each farm. So my farm means what is suitable for my farm, that particular pest management is taken up. Decision need to be made and how to manage all of the normal cultural practices such as planting, fertility, harvesting and pruning, as well as managing insects, diseases and weed problems that occur either regularly or sporadically. Effective management of pest problems depend on correct diagnosis. First, diagnosis must be made of the problem and correct identification of the pest causing it, use of techniques to prevent or delay infestations or infections, as well as techniques to control them. Early detection of pests by frequent inspection by plants. We should go and frequently inspect them. Take the pest, take to the laboratory and check them. Tolerance of pest at population densities that do not cause economic damage. Suppose there is no damage, you need not again spray. Such conditions and all you should check, children. These are the 4 important points for the pest management. That is correct diagnosis, use of techniques, got it, or delay infestation and infections, and early detections, and finally tolerance of the pest for the domain, that is population densities. And then if they are not causing any economic damage, you need not use any pesticides. Like that, integrated pest management is a unified program of multiple strategies used to avoid economic damage to crops and minimize environmental disturbance. And at the same time, it should not cause any disturbance to the environment. IPM induces cultural and mechanical practices to prevent pest outbreak from developing biological control, to encourage the pest's natural enemies to survive and attack the pest, and chemical control, which is usually used when cultural and biological controls are inadequate and a crop needs to be rescued from the damaging pest population. Got it? When integrated, when it will be started, when it has to be rescued from the pests. Got it? Pest population. If the pest population is outbroke, then we should go for integrated pest management. Due to increasing incidence of some pests developing resistance. Resistance means, just now I told you about the headache tablet, like that. Developing resistance. That is, we cannot control until and unless we increase the dose. Okay. Pesticides and to concern about pesticide contributing to environmental contamination, there has been a trend since mid-1970s towards using pesticides more judicially. This is very important. Judicially, how much is essential? That is what is called correct dose. And taking more multi-tactic and integrated approach to pest management. Although the term pest means insect to many people in IPM, the term pest is usually used in a broader sense that include disease-causing microorganisms, weeds, as well as certain insects, mites, molds, birds, and mammals. All together we call pests in the integrated pest control. I hope you understood this. Now we are moving for the biological pest control. Biological insect and pest suppression may be defined as the use of encouragement by man of living organisms or their products of the population reduction of pest insects. Classically, such suppression has usually involved the direct use of parasitoids. Parasitoids are organisms to regulate the reduce insect pest population. Two kinds of factors influence population change of species. Got it? One is species characteristics which are inherent and not easily changed or manipulated by man. Number 2 is environmental effects, some of which may be manipulated to determine to detriment of the species. Thus, the environmental influences include mortality factors which may be divided into two groups. So here parasitoids are used. Got it, children? So here you should know what are parasitoids. These are insect parasites of arthropods. Arthropods are the insects. Okay, all the insects we call them as arthropods. Arthropods have again pests on them, insect parasites. Then they are called parasitoids. They occur in order of this, while their scientific order, children. Got it? Coleopteron, Dipterol, Hymenoptera, Lepidoptera and Strepsoptera. These belonging to Hymenoptera and Dipteral, and particularly important being more commonly used in biological insect pest suppression as compared to the parasites. Parasitoids they are parasites for the parasitoids belonging to the, got it, other three orders. Some rough estimates suggest that over 60% of successes in biological insect and suppression may be attributed to the introduced by Hymenopterans parasitoids. So out of the other classes, order, species are there, no? Like this, these belong to the order Coleopteron, Dipterol, Hymenoptera and Lepidoptera and Strepsoptera. Out of that, this Hymenoptera is supposed to be very popular. Got it? Some of them are nematodes also. Certain nematodes associated with the insects, got it? They are also associated with arthropods. They are generally fusiform or vermiform, worms-like. With a terminal mouth situated on a rounded head, they have tapering tail. They are unsegmented multicellular invertebrates showing bilateral symmetry and bisexuality. Bilateral symmetry means when you cut a body of an organism into two equal parts, only in one direction they will become two equal parts. Like example, human being. If we cut us only one direction straight, if we are cutters only, we'll get two equal parts. Eye, brain, heart, everything. Heart also, two auricles are there. So one side only will get all parts equally. Similar. That kind of symmetry is called bilateral symmetry. And that is shown in the nematodes. And in bisexuality means you had already learnt in your previous classes, and I'll tell you both sexual organs in a same organism. Got it? Man is a unisexual organism. We have female and male, but in some of the organisms, both sexual organs will be there in the same body. Good examples of nematodes useful for insect pest suppression occur in the Myrmecidae. This class is Myrmecidae. Got it? These are called Rhizomyrmes and Netellinchidae. Got it? Netellinchidae. And example is Dalendinus. Some of these nematodes are obligatory parasitism. Parasiticon means obligatory parasites means parasites cannot complete its life cycle without host. Without host means outside they die. They are called obligatory parasites like viruses. And whereas other are facultative parasites. That means they can complete their life cycle without even host. Outside also they can complete. Many of endoparasitic, endo means inside, parasites which live inside the body. Ectoparasites means parasites which live outside the body. Got it? Many of the endoparasitic in various internal organs of the insects. Rhizomyrmes are species. Got it? Rhizomyrmes are the species which are important parasites of the mosquito larvae and has worldwide distribution. Got it? This is about parasitoids. The in biological pest management. Got it? Now we are going to learn about the factors, two factors. The first factor is species characteristics which are inherent and not easily changed or manipulated by man. The second one is environmental effects, some of which may be manipulated to determine the species, to reduce the species. Thus, the environmental influences include mortality factors, death rate, mortality means, which may be divided into two categories again, two groups. That is density dependent forces that frequently result from the activities of predators, parasite pathogens, or competition for some resources. Got it? Predators means you all know, killers. Density independent factors. Number 2, density dependent forces. Got it? That is, they frequently result from the activities of predators, parasites, pathogens, or competition of some sources. But some are not dependent, they are independent. Density independent forces are factors like climate, weather, which are usually not easily manipulated by man. We cannot change the weather. Today suddenly raining, I'll stop the rain. Can we change? Such are called independent factors. Some insect species occur in large number, other are less common. The monarchy butterfly, namely Danus pixippus, and still other rare black swallowtail Papilio polyvenus, the monarch butterfly, and got it, and also black swallowtail Papilio polyvenus are the species, large number of species, children. The vast majority of insect species exist at quite low population densities because the strong influence of predation. Predation means killers. Only about 1 to 5% of the insect species occur as pests. This pest population can be reduced by introducing suitable enemy pests. So enemy to enemy is friend, no, like that we can introduce another enemy pest. Got it? Thus, the suitability of such an enemy species may be judged by the so many aspects. Got it? It should be ecologically compatible. Got it? So they must both ecologically compatible. The particular species of pest means on that pest, another pest means they must have requirements similar to those of target pests. Got it? With the pest to be controlled. It should occupy the same spatial and temporal habit as the target. So our target will be one pest, no children? For that same target should be there, so that the chance of the target escaping attack will be minimized. It should show positive and rapid density responsiveness, and its reproductive capacity should be high. It should possess a strong capacity to search the target organisms even when they occur in low density, and it should be able to rapidly expand or disperse itself to side areas where its hosts occur. It should be strongly host specific so that non-target species are not harmed. It should not destroy the other plant animals, and its food should be restricted to specific host species only. Got it? Some of the organisms that are used in classical biological insect pest supervision are the parasitoids and nematodes. Just now we have learnt. Examples: wasp, beetles, Gordian worms. Got it? Tachidian flies, all these are. So they must be pests for pests. They must be enemies for the pests. Understood? So we are going to learn the next continuation of the lesson in another unit, second unit. Now for today, assignment will be sent in a description box. Okay? Try to see the video thoroughly. Wherever you don't understand, please ask the questions in your online session. Thank you.